on YouTube, I believe. And so I think it's time then to start. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Wendel Swan. My wife, Diane, and I have regularly attended the Emerson Avenue musical salons for the past 20 years. But tonight, for Jackie and Bill's second Salonline, you'll not hear the glorious sounds of salon musicians. Unfortunately, you'll hear my voice, but I do promise some interesting and good images in this PowerPoint presentation. For the past 50 years, solely as an avocation, I collected rugs and textiles primarily from the Near East, although for the past dozen years, I've been most interested in early Swedish folk weavings. Currently, I serve on the Board of Trustees of the Textile Museum at George Washington University, and I'm chair of the executive committee of the International Conference on Oriental Carpets, which has been conducting conferences and seminars in the US and Europe since 1976. And over all that time, I've both given a lot of lectures and heard many of them. Although the title of this presentation refers to Oriental rugs, avid collectors are most interested in weavings that reflect cultural heritage and use, such as this striking horse cover from the Caucasus Mountains, or this Shahsavan bedding bag from Northwest Persia that was used for storage, both during migrations or in the tent when not migrating. Textiles such as this silk velvet ikat woman's coat from Uzbekistan are by far the most important form of artistic expression for most people in the Near East and Central Asia. For special occasions such as a wedding, everyone, including the animals, is colorfully adorned. Although collectors of these artifacts often debate issues of rarity, cultural origin, or age, whenever rug aesthetics and appreciation are discussed, the mantra color, color, color is invariably used, just as location, location, location is used when discussing real estate. And although I've heard that mantra many times, usually the people who say it don't understand that color is an extremely complex topic. Serious collectors generally associate great color with natural dyes, such as madder root, and with superior dyeing, and they're quite correct in doing so. One problem with synthetic dyes is that if the colors change over time, as the fuchsine dye has in the reverse sumac on the left, it completely changes the color balance. The pile bag on the right, made with natural dyes, shows no such change, and you would be amazed at the colors that still exist in naturally dyed textiles after 400, 500, or even 1,000 or 2,000 years. Synthetics are not necessarily bad. This cotton cloth mola from the 20th century and from the San Blas Islands was probably dyed with chemical dyes, but the colors haven't changed, and the use of contrasting colors and primary hues in this humble little reverse applique makes it very appealing. And it's further appealing since I only paid $3 for it in Cartagena back in 1977. Color may refer to individual hues, of which we all have favorites, but color in rugs is much more than favorite individual hues. The quality and properties of wool affect our perception of color and clearly influence our preferences, in large part because of the way different wools absorb dyes and reflect light. But tonight we'll explore the appeal of color in context and discuss color theory, not symbolism or color as an indicator of age or the qualities of dyes or wools or about preferences for individual colors. We'll focus on how color contrast, or more properly, the plural contrasts, combine to create and are essential to the creation of the most appealing and dynamic textile, such as this aksaray from Turkey. Color theory, however, clearly applies to many other art forms. There will be a few interactive moments when your mics may be unmuted. So when you unmute them yourself, I'm sorry, it's when your mics are muted. So quickly shout out your answers and at the end, I'll try to answer any questions you may have. If beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so is color. In essence, colors don't exist. They are perceived. Perception of color stems from the varying sensitivity of cone cells and rods in the retina to different parts of the spectrum that are reflected. So colors may be defined and quantified by the degree to which those reflections stimulate these cells. Because of individual variations in those cone cells, we all perceive color somewhat differently, some of us quite differently. And our individual perceptions undoubtedly relate to our individual preferences, but we usually don't really understand how we may be perceiving colors. The presence of color itself has an effect on the human eye. Here, let your eyes wander around the image from side to side and up and down, and you'll observe an anomalous motion illusion, a perception caused by peripheral vision that makes the coils seem to rotate and the black dots to oscillate, even though they do not. This is not a video. This is how your eyes are perceiving those colors. Now, when the image is changed to grayscale, the oscillation of the dots may continue, but the coils themselves no longer appear to rotate. So color itself is largely responsible for this illusion. So this is the first question I have for you, and you can answer. Which half of this case is darker, the upper half or the lower half? What do you say?
The upper half looks darker to me.
Upper half here.
Okay.
Yeah, upper.
Upper. Pretty clear it's upper, isn't it?
They're the same.
Okay. Well, that's my smart son. Okay. By sliding this gray rectangle over the hinge, it's apparent that they're exactly the same color. But they're it's his smart, my smart son. By sliding this now I'm hearing myself in the background there somewhere. Over the hinge, it's apparent that they're exactly the same color. But they're it's his smart, okay. My smart son. No, somebody has to turn off that the okay, thank you. We're all in this case they're the same color, but we're all misled by the backgrounds, and by that I mean the context. The wondrous Leonardo da Vinci addressed this issue, saying, "Colors will appear what they are not, according to the ground which surrounds them." His other words and observations are the earliest that I know of on color theory. He wrote, "Of different colors equally perfect, that will appear most excellent which is seen near its direct contrary, a pale color against red, a black upon white, blue near a yellow, green near red, because each color is more distinctly seen when opposed to its contrary than to any other similar to it." He was talking about what modern color theorists refer to as color contrasts. For centuries after Leonardo, other Western scholars have continued to write about color. In 1666, Sir Isaac Newton, based upon observations with a prism, developed this, which was the first known circular diagram of colors, correlating the colors with musical notes and symbols for the planets. And while the comparison to the planets may be a bit odd, some people actually perceive colors as musical notes. Goethe developed this color wheel. Scientists and artists have created many variations of this concept. And although there are these variations, any color circle or color wheel which presents a logically arranged sequence of pure hues has merit. In the art world, the primary colors are yellow, red, and blue, and the secondary colors are green, orange, and purple, which can be, those secondary colors can be produced by a mixture of the primary colors, and they bear the same relationship to one another on the color wheel with the same intensity of contrast as the primary colors do to one another. Today's art students learn color theory, whether they're studying traditional media or web design. But modern studies may merely express what artists have understood about color for millennia. This baby mummy from the Urumqi Museum on the edge of the Taklamakan Desert in Western China dates from circa 1000 BC and indicates that humans may have an innate sense of color and color contrasts, which they demonstrate in their works, especially textiles. Johannes Itten, a teacher at the Bauhaus and noted color theorist and author, continued the commentary and analyses that go back to Da Vinci. He identified 7 contrasts of color: light and dark, saturation, hue, cool and warm, complementary, simultaneous contrast, and proportion. Understanding and recognizing these contrasts may help you to understand why you like a given rug and its colors, or its juxtaposition of colors. For our purposes, the contrasts of light and dark, hue and complementary, which are related contrasts, and proportion are probably the most important. Contrast of light and dark is the simplest contrast to understand and the one we're likely to think of first. Chiaroscuro is the use of strong contrast between light and dark, sometimes to achieve a sense of volume in three-dimensional objects. This has to be one of my favorite photographs of all time by Ansel Adams. Caravaggio, as in his 1602 work, Taking of Christ, was a practitioner of chiaroscuro. The contrast of light and dark is evident in the border of this Kerman Tree of Life rug. Contrast of saturation is the rather straightforward variation due to the intensity of the pigmentation, such as we see in Joseph Alber's Homage to the Square. What we might call an individual color in a rug, such as this blue, can be as complex as the harmonics of a single note on a stringed instrument. Several shades actually comprise the blue in this motif because of the way the dyes were taken by the wool. Shades vary from light blue to medium blue to dark blue. By itself, the blue in this area has contrast of saturation. Contrast of hues is relatively simple, but very important. The primary colors red, yellow, and blue are extreme instances of hue contrast. If we add red to the yellow and blue, we obtain what Leonardo da Vinci called similar hues of orange and magenta that have far less contrast with the primary red. The result, as I'm sure Leonardo would say, is not really very appealing, and it's visually confusing, especially between the red and the magenta, because they are, in Leonardo's words, similar colors. Most Caucasian rugs, as is the case with rugs from Western Turkey, use mainly the primary colors, giving them a high hue contrast, which may account for their universal popularity. In addition to the contrast of hues, this spectacular eagle kazak has contrast of light and dark and contrast of proportion, and that's a topic we'll soon address. All key elements in enabling us to say that this rug has great color. If we rotate the color wheel, we come to those secondary hues that I mentioned earlier. This palette has just as much inherent contrast of hues as the primary colors. Rugs and kilims from central Turkey often use that distinctive color combination based upon the secondary hues. Rarer than Caucasian rugs, they have a special appeal to collectors. When I substituted red for the orange in this kilim, it took on a very different color palette and nature, offering less contrast of hues, and I would contend it's less naturally appealing because the altered version lacks the requisite contrast. The weaver of this kilim understood exactly what she was using, why she was using the colors that she did. This other Turkish rug has those secondary colors characteristic of central Anatolia. And the same is true of this Gauguin painting on the right. Both are high in contrast, and that color palette itself is key to their appeal. See how the appeal is lost when the images are converted to grayscale. The contrast of warm and cool is the most difficult to demonstrate it, but I'll mention it briefly. Blue-green is said to be the coolest color and red-orange the warmest. So I will ask you, does this image of a Swedish ice hotel make you feel cold? Did that happen to anybody when they saw it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So psychologically, cool colors are often associated
Yes.
associated with
Yes.
okay. So psychologically, now somebody has turned on the video or something again. Okay, thank you. Anyway, psychologically, cool colors are often associated with sadness. People say they're feeling blue, and we sing the blues. On the other hand, does this image of the sun trigger in any of you a synesthetic or involuntary neurological experience of heat? Did that happen to anyone?
Yes.
Okay. So the cool, warm contrast may be more psychological and associational than physiological, but some believe that synesthesia occurs in as many as 1 of 23 people. Newton's association of musical notes and colors might have been due to synesthesia. We next turn to complementary contrast. Wheels are fundamental to color theory, and those colors which are directly opposite one another are called complementary colors, or in Da Vinci's words, contrary colors. The farther one moves away from a given point on the perimeter, the greater and greater is the contrast. Moving past the points of secondary hue contrast, the greater the contrast becomes still. At the opposite points on the circle are the complementary colors, although color theorists may differ as to where on the wheel certain colors should be placed. Although it may not have been apparent, we do perceive complementary colors as extremely high in contrast, just as high as light and dark, but different. In fact, this doesn't seem to have as much contrast as we saw when it was in color. In a moment, I'll convert Monet's painting to grayscale. What does anybody think will be the most noticeable change in the various contrasts? Anybody care to comment here? What do you think is going to be the biggest change?
I think we're going to lose the flowers. I think that's my guess.
I didn't raise any dumb kids, did I? Okay, let's see. I'm going to, okay.
The biggest change. I think we're going to lose the flowers.
Oops.
That's my guess.
I agree.
I didn't raise any dumb kids, did I?
Oh, somebody has the,
I think we're gonna lose the flowers too.
somebody has the YouTube playing in the background. I'm getting feedback. All right, thank you. So I don't know if you noticed this, but did it seem to you that the colors seemed to fade away rather than instantly disappeared when I converted this to grayscale? And that is due to your eyes making the adjustment. Complementary colors have a physiological basis, not merely a theoretical one. Please look steadily at the red circle. The receptors in our eyes will absorb a color for a certain length of time, but overload then affects what we see. To see the physiologically complementary color to red, please continue to look at the screen where the red circle is or was, and then tell me what color appears on the black screen. It's gone now, but what did you see?
I didn't see anything.
Okay.
I saw like a dark blue with a halo around it.
Okay. The color which you probably saw is that red's complementary color, a shade of greenish blue. Then it fades away. Next, stare at the black device in the center, just in the center. As you focus on the center, it appears that a yellow ball is rotating around the perimeter, displacing blue balls in rotation. Now, move your eyes away from the center to the perimeter, moving your eyes constantly, and the yellow ball disappears. Now, move your eyes back to the center and continue to stare at the center, and the circulation of the yellow ball is resumed.
Wow.
Now, keep staring at the center. Stare at the center. And as I moved to this screen, the circle of yellow balls appears as the cones in your retina are transmitting the complementary yellow, and then they fade away. These two Caucasian prayer rugs of approximately equal size, condition, and age actually look quite different.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah. Which of the two would you say you would prefer? And remember, don't be shy. So who would prefer the one on the left?
I would.
Left for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many would say the one on the right? Nobody. Okay, good.
Amanda liked it.
Okay. Well,
Left for me.
your preference likely relates to the contrast of proportion or extension or scale, if you will. In the Caucasian Fracquarello on the left, there's greater contrast in the proportion of the main border elements to those in the
Randy liked it.
and the large open red field is proportionally contrasted with the medallion and field elements. This is an example of the contrast of proportion or extension. Oops, I'm having trouble getting my slide. There we go. While the total amount of ivory, which always provides contrast, is approximately the same in each rug, the scale of the ivory areas in the Fracquarello on the left make it seem as if there's more ivory in it. One could easily conclude that the Fracquarello is dynamic while the Cuba is static. Of these two Susanis from Central Asia, which projects the more appealing image? How many would say the one on the left? Anybody?
Can we say we like them both?
Well, who likes the one on the left?
I like the one on the left and the one on the right.
You can't say that.
But I do.
We like the one on the
I
left.
like them for different reasons.
Okay, all right. All right.
I like them both.
Who likes the one on
Yes.
who prefer? You have to take one
Randy
of
and
them.
Misty.
And the one on the right.
Who takes the one on the right home?
The CHIAROSCURO.
Okay.
I do.
And would you say why?
Purple's terrific.
Yeah, the purple's great and that's dramatic, powerful design.
Yeah. Well, this is if you made an your observation was based upon the fact that you feel that the one on the left is crowded or too busy, that those are ways of saying that it lacks proportional contrast. It was difficult to tell where the border begins and ends, and the same might be said of the central medallion. It might be that the weaver was sort of afraid of leaving any open spaces. In the Susani on the right, the large circular medallions clearly delineate a border, even though the purple ground is the same as that of the field. In these details, we can see the technical achievement of the weaver of the Susani, but, whoops, I'm sorry. The sickly colors of the Ushak on the left may be synthetic, but more importantly, they lack contrast of any sort, except that one might see a contrast of saturation between the border and the ground. The rich colors of the early Anatolian rug on the right have abundant complementary hue and light and dark contrasts. And this is really color, color, color. Okay, how many of you love cilantro?
Me, I love it.
Okay.
Me.
And others, all right. And does anybody swear that it tastes like soapy dishwater?
Yeah, I can't stand it.
Okay. Okay, well, recent scientific tests have shown.
Yes.
Me and others. All right. And does it?
Recent scientific tests have shown that the difference in reaction is due to whether one can or cannot detect certain components in it. We taste and smell things quite differently, and we react to taste, smells, sounds, and pain differently. Um, I read a book a couple of years ago in which a neurologist said that it may be that our preferences for things such as, well, color in particular, may depend on something akin to something like a switch between the eyes and the brain, and the little neurons go on one path or another, and that's either like or dislike. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but it's obviously a physiological thing where people do not like cilantro. And so I believe it is with color and contrast. Perhaps some people just don't like color at all, especially bold colors, and some may not like any contrast. Last year, our neighbors finally sold their house after two realtors told them that to do so, they had to paint every room in the house, as well as the exterior, including the fence, in some shade of gray, because the millennials insist on gray and don't want color. Many home and rug owners do prefer the neutral look and essentially bland ushaks, such as on the right and on the floor, sometimes fetch thousands, tens of thousands at auction. However, the modern ushak, whether woven in this palette or bleached, has little relationship to its ancestral namesakes that are in the 3,000 year plus tradition of Oriental rugs. But perhaps the marketplace has revealed just how much of a dunce I am in talking about the importance of contrast. Woven in Isfahan during the reign of Shah Abbas I, that was 1587 to 1629, this silk rug measures 7 feet 7 by 5 feet 7 and is reported to have 14 shades of color. I don't know what you see, but I have great difficulty counting beyond 3. Formerly in the collection of Doris Duke, it sold in 2008 for almost $4.5 million. While the comparison may not seem or even be fair, and solely from these images, I find little more to admire in the Duke rug than I do in this bleached out yastik that was offered on eBay for $125. Although more contrast can be seen in detail, I think that when I spend $4.5 million on my next rug, I'll insist on a little more color. The juxtaposition of colors can affect the way that we see scale and proportion and how adjacent colors are perceived. If you look across these, you will see that all 3 gray centers are exactly the same size, but the yellow seems to compress the inner box while the red seems to expand it. Please look at these squares individually. There appear to be chromatic diagonals in each square, which seem to either expand or contract with an effect not unlike what we saw in the previous squares. This visual phenomenon relates to how we perceive color in rugs, but I want you to note that there is no clear delineation of where one color ends and another begins. And that's why these diagonal lines seems to expand and contract. Can you see sort of like can you see them pulsing? Okay, this is one part of a fabulous 16th century Mughal carpet at the Met. I consider it to be one of the most beautiful objects I've ever seen. In this further detail, note that the tendrils and all of the flower heads are outlined with a dark color, something that's a common weaving tradition. We see outlining in Turkish rugs, Turkmen rugs, and Caucasian rugs, among virtually all others. If we look at other media, we can see outlining, such as these Iznik tiles in the 16th century Rustam Pasha Mosque in Istanbul. The argument could be made that the artist first outlined the pattern and then filled it in with colors. However, I believe that this traditional practice can be explained by color theory. Traditional representational oil paintings generally did not employ outlining, even though there were masters of light and dark, such as Rubens. But from the Impressionist movement forward, it was color itself, not dukes or duchesses or angels or demons with which artists were concerned. And so outlining can be seen in oil paintings over the last 150 years, especially in Impressionism. Matisse had carefully outlined the gulls in the ursaries before, and here you see various things such as the pool table and the chairs outlined. So why do we see outlining in paintings or ceramics or in Oriental rugs? And here you see how Matisse outlined. Well, in my quest to find the reason for an explanation of outlining, I asked George Yevremovich of Philadelphia, who was one of the world's foremost producers of new rugs, why his rugs, which so faithfully create the spirit of antique rugs, have outlining. His answer was tradition. Okay, all right, it's a tradition. But why is it a tradition? Well, he really didn't have an explanation other than he was replicating a common design technique. I think I discovered the answer myself, and it was through Leonardo da Vinci. Remembering Leonardo's words, follow the vertical red panels as they move back and forth between the horizontal stripes. The red panel that began on the left is always next to yellow stripes, while the one on the right is always next to blue stripes. When the panels converge in the center, as they're about to right now, you see that the panel colors are exactly the same red, but the one adjoining yellow seems orange, and the one adjoining seems purple. The reds don't change color, only the way you perceive those colors changes. In this related exercise, let your eyes wander around the red and black background. For how many of you do the blue circles appear to float above the background, almost as if it were a hologram? Does somebody see that? Does it have that effect on you?
That's the effect it has on me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Okay. That's the effect it has on me, but not everyone perceives it that way. Do you have trouble seeing what is depicted in this mola? If so, it's because of the effect known as simultaneous contrast, which happens when primary hues of the same saturation adjoin. If the blue is changed to green, the presence of Inca warriors is much easier to see. But it's hard to see them in the original. With simultaneous contrast, it can be difficult to tell where one color ends and another begins. The edge between the red and blue here almost vibrates, and after a while, we begin to see black lines where none exist. And then for most of us, it also seems that the red stripes are advancing toward us. However, when the stripes are separated by a dark color, the red and blue lines now appear sharper and less visually confusing. And this, I believe, is the explanation for outlining that we see in rugs and textiles over the millennia. It is to prevent perceived color bleed and visual confusion. A few years ago, I found this image in Scientific American. And so here are two outlines of the Mediterranean. I will ask you now, in the top version, does either the water or the land mass seem to be tinged with a certain color? Anybody want to answer?
Yeah, the top one seems to have a yellowish tint inside.
Okay. And what about the bottom drawing? Is one or the other tinged?
Bottom
The
drawing.
outside stroke appears.
Yes,
On
the
the bottom.
land mass appears to be tinged. Okay, so that's the way, that is the way we see it. In fact,
The outside stroke appears.
the water and the land are both pure white in both drawings, but the yellow outline is on the water side in the top and on the land side in the bottom. And we perceive that that yellow outlining bleeds into the adjacent white, but not beyond the brown shoreline. And this may account for this ancient technique of using outlining so as to prevent the perception of color bleed and color confusion. This is precisely the point that Leonardo made, but the weaving world had reached that conclusion many centuries earlier. Note here how this fantastic creature is entirely outlined. Michel Eugène Chevreul was a French chemist whose work on fatty acids led to a new type of candle and to the eventual development of margarine. In 1824, Chevreul was appointed as director of dyeing at the Gobelins tapestry work. There, he received complaints about the quality of the dyed yarns that he had produced for the tapestries. His retort was that the problem was not chemical in nature, but optical. It was inappropriate use of color, not the dyeing, that was the culprit. His lengthy studies eventually led to his identification of several color contrasts, including his statement of the laws of simultaneous contrast and complementary contrast, and his publication in 1839 of the laws of contrast of color, his most influential book. He provided many examples of how juxtaposed colors can enhance or diminish each other's intensity, and he described many ways to produce desired color effects, such as with massed monochromatic dots. In other words, pointillism. Chevreul and Delacroix, who studied Chevreul's work, were major influences in the development of Impressionism. In the 1880s, the French post-impressionist painters Signac and Seurat combined Chevreul's color theories with painters' practices to develop the pointillist technique of using separate dots rather than broad strokes on their canvases. They believed that pointillism made the perceived hues more brilliant. In 1884, they visited Chevreul to pay homage to the man they regarded as the founder of French colorism. In 1889, the year of Chevreul's death, Seurat painted Circus Sideshow in pointillist technique. What we perceive as brown hair lit from above actually has no brown in it. Although the dots don't frequently join on the light canvas, one can envision the pointillist dot as a form of predecessor to the electronic pixel that can be seen in extreme close-up. Notice the contrast of saturation in the red ground. So what appeared to be just a red is many reds. So I'm sure that the rug community will continue to say color, 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 but perhaps the rug world might think of a new mantra, so that the next time you're attracted, as almost all of us are, by a wonderful purple in a rug, you may notice its context and whether it's juxtaposed to its gold complementary color. And when you see a rug or some other work of art that you really like, ask yourself why. Is it because of the complementary contrasts and the contrast of hues? Or is it because of the contrast of light and dark, or the contrast of proportion? Or is it, as it is for me with this example, all of the above? So, even Looney Tunes understood the importance of contrasts and outlining, as you can see by Porky Pig and Tweety Bird, and by Daffy's feet down, where his left foot is down, orange foot is down on an orange ground. So with that, as the Wascal Wabbit says, that's all, folks. Now, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, we can talk for a bit.
Do you still have that Tree of Life rug that you,
No, I was going to give it to you, but you didn't seem to have any interest in it. And I don't have that anymore.
okay.
So,
Very interesting, Wendell. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, great, just great.
Thanks,
As
Wendell.
always.
You
That
are
was
the man,
great.
baby. You are the web doctor.
Yes, I have a
well,
question.
yes.
So it was interesting to see, probably about in the middle part of your presentation, what looked like a Persian rug that seemed to have pretty sophisticated colors compared with a rug maybe from Central Asia with more sort of geometric and starker colors. And the people in the audience seemed to like the one with the
We
stronger
changed the color on our rugs.
seemed to like the one with the stronger colors, whereas I enjoyed the one that with the more sophisticated design work. So when we talk about preferences and aesthetics and such, I suppose that one of the things that sort of underlies this is whether someone likes really stark colors and geometric designs, and whether one likes more sophisticated or more nuanced colors and less sort of strong geometric designs and such. So do you find that there's that sort of difference in the appreciation of those rugs?
Well, as I think I was indicating when I showed the Ushaks, some people just do not have a preference for strong, bold colors and strong designs, and that's just there. That's in people, and it's not. I think it's not something you learn. It's like cilantro. Either you can accept strong, bold colors or not. And in those other two examples, by the way, the finer one on the left sold at auction for at least 20 times what the one on the right would sell for. There is in the Near East and in Central Asia a preference at times to show very intricate work. And so for some people, I mean, you know, the weavers are different. The buyers, the customers, the users are all different. But
Yeah.
but I think the color theorists have tried to explain why some of these combinations of colors and scale are more appealing than others, but no contrast, no form of contrast is going to be universally appealing. We're just all different. But I think you could see in some of those examples how not having the contrast, let's say, of the primary hues, if you didn't have it where you have these similar colors, it wasn't a very appealing image. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
yeah, it does. The notion that some people are just sort of predisposed to liking strong colors is probably a good way to think about it. Thank you.
Yes. Well, another thing is when if I ask for which one do you prefer, some people will answer. Like, for example, there were the two Caucasian rugs, the Fakralo on the left and the Kuba on the right. In that case, some people will say they prefer the Kuba on the right because it seems to be finer, and they think that well, they prefer something to be of a finer weave than a coarser weave. It's sort of like what the Impressionists encountered when they began doing their work. You know, the coarse brush strokes, and there were a lot of people who just would not accept that in the salons in Paris in the 19th century.
Yeah, thank you.
So Wendell, this is Roger.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a difference between these textiles as art versus decor, and sometimes people, if they're going to live with something, want the decor to be more in the background and not in the foreground. And some of these pieces sort of command attention, but if you're living with it, maybe you don't want to be forced to focus on them all the time. Does that play into this issue?
Yes, yes, but it still comes back, I think, to this personal preference. Can somebody accept these bold patterns and bold colors? Wherever you go in the Near East or into Central Asia, you see strong colors and patterns, these bold geometric patterns that are on the buildings, on the mosques, and the clothing that the people wear. I didn't show it, but I have an image of some Qashqai men with very colorful clothing on. These bold costumes or bold attire, this is their expression of art. This is the way they live. It's not the same in the West. I don't know if it's inherent in us. It probably is to a certain extent, these preferences, or whether to a certain degree it's learned.
Wendell, I can give you a counter example, very sad. David Zarapor's son. David used to give him every quarter a nice rug for his room, and he changed them. He's always giving him an attractive rug. And recently, his son came to him and said, "Dad, could I have one of those modern rugs?" And they went out and researched it, but he clearly, it was generational, that there's a kind of a taste that's now been adopted widely. And it's very discouraging to see somebody who could have anything is basically wanting something very bland and subdued.
Well, but that's what I think I was saying about the millennials wanting gray in a house that they would buy. I think it's the same thing, but we have generational changes in all kinds of art. The traditional art forms, performance art, visual art, it's all changing. Nobody wants brown furniture anymore. At least the younger people don't.
That's true.
And there's not the demand for Oriental rugs is certainly diminishing.
Somebody said it's circular, but it seems like the circle is very, very broad.
Yeah.
Hey, Wendell, how about a question from the interwebs?
Okay.
On YouTube, Mandy Ferguson wrote, "I may have missed this, but if not, could you talk a bit about how you got started in this field? Do you have a favorite textile / rug country / culture?"
Oh, I got started in it back when I was in law school, and a good friend and classmate inherited some from his grandmother, and I was just attracted to them. And I started to go to the rug dealers in Denver, and I got books from the library, but the books at that time were just terrible. I mean, they really didn't tell you very much. And that's where I got started. And once I started, that was just it. I I could have gone in some other direction, but there was something about rugs and textiles that had a special appeal to me. And then the other part of that question was, Bill, it was, do I have a favorite place of origin? I would say that Persia, modern day Iran, it produces the greatest variety of styles of any place that there is. So whatever kind of whatever look you like, whatever colors you like, you can find them somewhere from Persia. But many people who collect for a long time gravitate to the rugs from Turkey. It has the longest continuous weaving tradition of any area. On the other hand, there are people who really love the pre-Columbian textiles from South America. I think it all depends on what you develop your own personal likes, and sometimes it's by what you encounter.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So I'm gonna just, the preamble is, you know, I'm a poet, I'm a writer, and when you say color, 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 and you get into the relationship between color theory and what's innate, I think of language and it's word, 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 and the importance of the word. If you even on Easter ignore the word as that kind of word, it in language it's word, 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 but what makes, and our words in English, we have the same word, but it's a noun, it's an adjective, it's a verb, and it's the same word. So the only way you can really understand is the context, and the context is driven by contrast. So I'm saying, you know, there may not be an articulation in the poetic world of the cognate relationship, color theory to this and everything, but I'm thinking, I think this is probably the same. This has been a wonderful, wonderful, the illustrations and the visuals, you know, the visual tricks that our eyes play. I mean, that was a trip without LSD. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm currently, I'm taking a class on the story of languages and reading a book about them, and how languages and dialects and changed with time, how many different languages there are, the sources of languages. And it's just mind-boggling how languages change over time. And perhaps you're aware of that. I'm reading a book by John McWhorter. Do you know who that is?
Oh, sure. I know John McWhorter, and I'll send you something. I'll be in touch with you after this. I'll send you something on George Steiner.
Okay. Yeah. McWhorter he cites just one example of changes in language after another. And it's just sort of all mind-boggling. I mean, we know how different English has been over the last 500 years and is changing now again. And so to a certain extent, the taste in rugs and textiles is changing a bit. But if you saw that one little fragment from the Taklamakan Basin with the fantastic creature in it, that looks like something, the colors, the outlining, everything is almost as if it could have been woven within the last 100 years. I mean, the drawing of the animal, of course, is different, but the colors and everything really are the same. They're very traditional.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Sure. Well, do we have anything more? Nobody poured any wine on their keyboard to send to me, so I'm a little.
Well, Mandy writes, thanks for the interesting answer. A lawyer with good taste is always a good thing. Not sure where that you got promoted or something. I'm not sure. Maybe that's a anti-compliment. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the YouTube broadcast.
Okay.
I guess this meeting can continue. Excellent job.
All right. Well, for those who are here, this is a new venture for both me and Bill. Bill is sending this out through YouTube at the same time. And we had to figure out how all this works and the timing of it. I began to use Zoom for our OLLI classes when the live classes were closed. And so I had never heard of Zoom before. I don't know how many others that are still with us have, how many others have used it, but I never used it, never heard of it, although it's very, very popular.
Well, it's been used a lot. They say it's easy to destroy one too, that you can bomb them.
Well, yeah, apparently you can get in. I don't know how they do that. A lot of companies have used Zoom, although they haven't been concerned with security up to this point. That's what I've read.
Was this physically demanding for you to do this? You had to do lots of different things physically?
Well, John, you've watched me give presentations in the past, and you know, I read off of one screen. I have notes that I refer to
This might be more complicated, is it?
Well, I have a laptop where all my notes are, but I'm looking at the screen that I'm operating from doesn't have those notes. So I have two things going at the same time.
And you have earphones.
I do, and that I have the headset on so that my voice doesn't sound like it's coming from the bottom of a well.
Right. Well, I think you did better than the last time I saw this done. Well, I mean, you've been worked on it a little bit, and it shows.
Well,
knocked it out of the park, baby.
Yeah, I thought this
was
was very smooth. I mean, everybody's a beginner at Zoom, and you see all that's being used on a lot of broadcast TV and otherwise. And this was a lot smoother than a lot of the ones I've seen on TV channels the last few days. So congratulations.
Yeah, and my 2 cents is I've been using online video tools. I put them in 20 years ago, and I know, and I use several different ones. And Zoom is a new competitor, and security concerns are right. From the technical side, this was very nice, but on the content side, this was just over the top. Thank you.
Wendell, thanks for inviting me. I have to run away.
Okay, John, we'll see you. Yeah, Sarah and Becca and Harry, have you used Zoom? Becca, do you use it?
I do use it. We use WebEx, and we've been using a lot more Zoom over the last 4 weeks with a lot more remote work and obviously a lot more connection via video versus in person.